Welcome, everyone, to Montessori 101, a live show from Child of the Redwoods, all about the magic of Montessori. We believe every child deserves a Montessori education. I'm Aubrey Hargis.
And I'm David Hargis. So whether you're live with us right now, or you're watching the replay, or maybe you're listening to this as a podcast, doesn't matter. We're just happy to have you with us. And if you'd like to know more about our work at Child of the Redwoods, you can visit us online at childoftheredwoods.com.
Yes. So today we are doing our little episode about the geometric cabinet, which is super, super cool. And we actually have one right here behind us. If you're watching live, you can see. If you're not watching live and you're on the podcast, it is a rectangular shaped box with 6 little sections in it. Okay. It's an essential in our book.
Yeah,
Of our
that's
21
right.
essentials, right?
Yeah, we put together 21 essentials across the 10 subject areas. We did our research and we identified 10 subject areas in the Montessori curriculum for the primary and the lower, what we call primary and lower elementary. So that's basically ages 2 to 9. And then we said, what are some of the essentials you would want to have if you were, stocking a home classroom or otherwise just interested in learning how to the essentials of Montessori? And well, this was one of them. In fact, it's probably the most expensive of the pieces. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But
yes, I was really hesitant to put it on our essentials list because the cabinet itself is really, really pricey. We didn't even have one when we were teaching our own children at home.
That's
when they were being homeschooled as preschoolers or lower elementary students. We really bought this because we're teaching the courses and it's great to demonstrate with the actual classroom material.
That's right. So, that said, it's so unique.
Yes.
It is an essential in our book from that perspective. So we have a lot of things in our essentials that are
that you give
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very, very powerful. And so there are a lot of things on the essentials that are just, what you might consider everyday or common. This is one of those objects or essentials that's a little less common. It's a little bit more of an investment. You can DIY. We'll talk a little bit about that. If you're interested in all the essentials, we've been doing a series of it all year. You can get the whole list on our website at childoftheredwoods.com/essentials and see the entire list of 21 for free.
All right. So let's kind of get into it. David, you want to talk a little bit about what the geometric cabinet is? Like what's in it?
Well, yes. I mean, this will be a real shock. It is a cabinet of geometric shapes. The geometric cabinet is, strictly speaking, a cabinet of shelves, and each of those shelves holds some number of shapes, up to 6. There are traditionally 35 shapes hiding in there. Not hiding, I guess. They're neatly laid out, as we'll show you in a second. And the variety of shapes, we'll talk about that in a second. The one thing that you'll notice is they're all blue. And this, again, goes with something we've talked about many times, which is this isolation equality. We want the child to be able to focus on the shape or the qualities of the shape and not be distracted by other qualities like the texture or the color. The shapes themselves really vary. So I'm going to pull out some of these. Again, if you're listening, you'll have to use your imagination here. We'll try to describe, but basically imagine we have a small one. It's about, 2 feet, 2 feet wide. There are 6 trays in it. Each tray has, we'll hold this up. This is the top tray and it has circles. So it has 6 yellow cards that are square, and then in the middle of the square is the shape itself. In this case, they are circles. So one of the trays is specifically circles. The only difference in the circles is the size, right? So here in this case, the quality that you'd be working on with the child is size, right? So you have a very small circle over here and a very large circle on the other end if you were reading it left to right. Okay. And you'll notice that when you pull the shape out, there is another blue circle underneath. So there's this matching. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second when we get into actually how you do the lessons, but just to kind of give you a sense of what these look like.
So there's these, so the blue that's underneath is just blue felt. So it's just the color of the tray itself. And then you have these yellow parts, and these are the frames that the little little circles,
the shapes or whatever,
the shapes, and
geometric shapes.
a lot of people recognize this from the metal insets. They look very similar to the metal insets. The if you buy an actual geometric cabinet, these are usually made out of wood, so that's a slight difference. But a lot of, I think David actually, one of the drawers actually goes on top. Yeah. So like 5 of them go inside and one of them kind of sits on top, and that way they fit in there. Yeah. So, but we're going to be mixing them up, so it doesn't really matter. So you can see this one is a
squares and rectangles.
Squares and rectangles. Yeah, one square and then a whole bunch of rectangles.
And you can see the progression again. So imagining what a child might be thinking as you show them this set of the frames and the inserts, and getting to think about, oh, these are equal length, but what about over here? Not quite equal, but very similar. So
yeah, you might even look at this one and think, oh, that's a square.
Mm-hmm.
But once you actually pull it out and you start really looking, you realize it's longer on one side than it is on the other. And it's not actually square, it's actually a rectangle, but it's very, very subtle.
That's right. And that is the point, is that why we put it on the essentials list is that it's that very subtle variation in the shapes that's so neat. Let's look at the next one, actually. So we have circles and then we have rectangles. All right. A little bit of a house of cards here in our tiny studio.
I know it's a little awkward to this live, but
rectangles, you had sort of this progression. Here you have a variety of kinds of triangles that are somewhat similar, and then some that are very different. So if I were to look at this triangle versus this triangle, they don't look the same. But this triangle and this triangle, they look kind of similar. And those are the kinds of things that you might be having the child think about. This is probably one of my favorites. This is the 4th tray. These are all kinds of polygons. So we have 5-sided, 6-sided, all the way up to, I think, a 9-sided is going to be the biggest, the nonagon.
The nonagon, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And again, just a lot of fun. You can, so again, we're thinking about what a child might think about these shapes. So let's take the pentagon and the hexagon.
Hexagon.
We're going to talk about that in just a second. You can see, they're very, very slightly different. And that is really interesting. And again, why would you want to have such an elaborate set? Well, it's because then you can start to look at these variations. Look at the 9-sided of the nonagon. It's almost like a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can start to think, what would a 100-sided shape look like? Would that be just a circle? And how is it not a circle?
All right. There's 2
now
more
we
trays.
Got some fun ones here. Quadrilaterals. Nope, I'm sorry. This is the curvilinear figures. So you have ovoids. You have, I'm not sure what you call this. We have a chevron shape. You have, what do you call this flower shape?
A quatrefoil.
Quadrifoil. What a cool name.
I know.
And then a square. I mean, a triangle. And then the last one here. These are the quadrilaterals. So you have rhombus, trapezoid, the kite shape, another chevron. And again, this is fun because they're just kind of unusually shaped, right? There's sort of an Alice in Wonderland quality somehow to these different shapes. They all have names, which is, again, part of the value of the geometric cabinet, because you're going to say that even though these shapes look kind of funny, they actually have names. And when the child gets older, you'll start to do more mathematics to sort of, doing the angles and helping them do geometry to figure out the total, the angle of each of the edges and how that helps define the different kinds of quadrilaterals and triangles. But this sensorial experience right here with the cabinet, you can see all of these, is a great start.
So we had a little question over here, Shabria. Might you want to purchase a geometric cabinet over the metal insets? It is a question a lot of our members ask. Usually, our members of the two purchase the metal insets. They are not like you're going to get some of the same shapes with the metal insets. It's just with the metal insets, you will really get like one of each of the core shapes.
Yeah, I
To
think the
you
metal
can
lenses have the ovoid and the
you mean
ovipular.
the oval and the ellipse.
Yes, that's right.
Yep. And there is a quatrefoil in there.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
there's a lot of shapes in a traditional set of metal insets, but you're not going to get a tiny circle, and then
Yeah, the
successively
6 different.
larger circles. So
Yes.
usually, what I tell my friends in my primary course is if you're going to invest in one of them, I usually recommend the metal insets over the geometric cabinet. It's more affordable. They're you use the like you use them for writing, and you could do the same with this.
Sure.
But it's also honestly, I just think it's easier to create a set of circles that are like concentric
Yeah.
circles or rectangles that build up to a square. Like you can easily do that out of paper or foam or
Well,
another.
in the modern era, it's so much
Yeah,
easier with
you just print it
printing
out.
software, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
So is it a lovely material? Absolutely. Would I, if I were teaching in a Montessori classroom, would I want a formal geometric cabinet? Yes, I would.
yeah.
But at home, it's just like the cost per what you get as compared to the metal insets. For me, the metal insets wins. But
Yeah.
the reason it's on our essential list is, as David and I mentioned earlier, is like the lessons and the concepts, the way you interact with the geometric cabinet is just really beautiful. I don't know, it just really shows off the Montessori curriculum, how everything really fits together,
That's
and
right.
how the lessons here really build to help your child have a different understanding of the world. Okay, so I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, it's a tough one because I mean, if you look up what does it cost to buy a geometric cabinet, it might be $600.
It could be for like a premium
Yeah, a
set.
premium. So
Mhm.
it can be very, very expensive, and that's why it's a very unusual. It's a very unusual for us on our list. We tend to always highlight very low cost DIY materials. This is kind of a unique Montessori material. It's also can be pricey, but
It is something you can
you
DIY.
can definitely DIY it. And we think it so wonderfully expresses sort of these concepts. So you can start using this with your primary age child, right?
Mhm.
Now, with all lessons, you would start with a small set and then grow from there as you would any 3 period lesson approach.
Right.
But preschoolers and kindergartners you can be working through these. There are lots of lessons about identifying the shapes. And then as they get older into the elementary years, they're going to start to study geometry in more detail at a little more scientific or mathematical level. We consider geometry a separate subject area from mathematics because it has so many unique properties. It's one of the things that's so amazing about it in the Montessori curriculum,
Yep.
and you'll get tons of uses out of it. Like all the materials, when you think about that, first playing those kids who are in the primary ages, a preschooler, even a toddler who might be looking at it something very, very basically, through a kindergartner transitioning to first, second, third grade. Those earlier years are much more sensorial, right? They're thinking about the shapes, they're feeling the inset, they're feeling the frame, they might be feeling the felt underneath as they trace around with their finger,
Mhm.
or feeling the shape of the object of the object itself, of the shape. And some of the games that you might play that you'll talk about in a minute, like with the mystery bag and so forth. These are really great. And then building that foundation through sensorial experience to the more complicated version that they're going to approach as they move from sensorial into the abstract thinking period of their development in the second plane.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, I have to be honest, there are, as you saw, I cannot remember all of these shapes. Why do we have kids focus on all these shapes?
Well, there are a lot of reasons why. So one of the first reason would be that we are teaching them, we're strengthening their vocabulary. So we are learning the names of the things in the world. And so if you think about little tiny toddlers, they are going around, they're pointing at things, they're saying, what's that? What's that? What's that?
Yeah.
And we're just telling them like, oh, hey, yeah, this is a clock. And yeah, this is
electric candle.
This is a glue stick. And so we're just we're naming things for them. So Maria Montessori noticed that these little children just seem to be seeking the names of things. Shabria says, now I now see, and I want the geometric cabinet too. I know.
Yeah, it's
I
very
know.
cool.
Once you see, you cannot unsee, you know. So they're naming things. So Maria Montessori thought to herself, you know what, like, why are we just teaching our children only the basic names of shapes? Usually, and shapes are a thing we want to teach our toddlers. You know, even modern parents know you should teach your toddler the name, the shape of a triangle or a square or a circle. And that's usually where we stop with shapes.
That's right.
Those are the three basic shapes: triangle, circle, and square. Can you think of any others? Maybe rectangle.
Rectangles. I know that there are names,
but then
for
we go into
particular
like
kinds of triangles.
Then we might start naming like a star or, you know,
an ovoid.
Nope, not oval is not usually taught.
I was just thinking of shapes.
Oh, okay.
Shapes I could remember. What are some basic shapes? A kite shape, I think you might.
Maybe
Shapes the shape of a kite.
Maybe the shape of a kite, but
a heart.
I mean, it's a heart. So that's usually what it is. Thank you. It's usually triangle, circle, square, star, heart. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's like what we teach our toddlers. And Maria Montessori thought to herself, like, why stop there? Children want to know the names of things. Why wouldn't we teach them what an acute scalene triangle is? You know,
right. Stop signs. Shabria is just saying stop sign.
Stop sign. Yeah. So we would call it a stop sign. Why not illuminate it and tell our children, you know, all the way from like pentagon, hexagon, heptagon, octagon.
Let's count the sides. I don't remember how many. I think it has 8 sides, a stop sign. So it'd be an octagon.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it has a name.
It does. Yeah. And then in our, you know, as we kind of progress through the years, you know, our elementary students, you know, they still are like learning all of the names and wanting to know. They're really starting to compare them. So we actually start using the geometric cabinet in a different way in lower L. So if you did purchase it and you planned on continuing with Montessori all the way through,
either homeschooling or even just supplementing at home.
Yeah, either one. You're going to use the geometric cabinet in primary, and then you're going to continue it in the lower elementary. Now, David and I asked ourselves this question. We were sitting on the couch not too long ago, and we were like, gosh, like, even we don't remember all the names of these shapes, you know, like, what is this? Oh, yeah, it's a quatrefoil. Why does Aubrey know that? Because I remember it from the metal insets. Right? Like teaching Montessori has kept these name shapes alive. But even I look at like some of these.
No way. If you pulled these at random, I couldn't name all
like,
of them.
What is this shape now? I don't know.
So the question is like, why would you teach your child something that they probably won't remember, that even you yourself probably don't remember, and honestly, you don't use? The reason is, just like Aubrey said, children have an immense ability to learn, and their brains are like sponges, right? So you can teach them the names of things. You're teaching them that there are names for all of these things, that we can describe the world very, very precisely, and their minds can just explode. Their kids, you know, you think about how, especially an older kid, like a lower elementary kid, they get really obsessed with dinosaurs or sharks or cars or whatever, right? They go through these obsessive periods where they just want to learn. That is completely, absolutely normal. That's exactly what their brains are wanting to do. It's wanting to soak up like a sponge everything. And so you can get their brains to soak up all of this information. Now, they eventually will turn into graybeards like me, or not, I suppose. And at that point, they will have decided which of those things they're going to keep or not. And that's also part of the learning process. As the child goes from that second plane, which is around the age of 12, into the third plane around the time of puberty, they're going to start focusing more and more heavily on social interaction. Their brains are going to start to prioritize social and intellectual interactions, and they're going to begin to sort all that information that you've been teaching them or they've been learning themselves autodidactically, and they're going to decide which of this stuff is really valuable and which of it they don't really need to know anymore, and they'll start to sort it through. But by giving them this huge vocabulary and exposure early on, you're setting them up for making those decisions in the most fully informed way possible. So why would you want to help your kids learn all kinds of things that they probably won't use or remember? Because you're giving them a big leg up. You're also training their brain. You're training their brain to do really, really concrete things.
Yeah. So let's talk more about like the benefits
Yeah.
of this material. Like why use the geometric cabinet? If we talk about like we're training the brain, what are we training their brain for? The first and most obvious is, of course, like to learn the names of things. So in Montessori, we call this nomenclature. So we're giving our children more nomenclature. We're going to do this using the 3-period lesson. Basically, like we teach the nomenclature of just about everything in Montessori. That is the technique we use to teach it. We are going to also use the geometric cabinet to teach the child what a curve feels like versus a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can you think of anything where it's going to be relevant for a child to know how to make a curve versus a straight line?
I'm imagining something that might involve a pencil.
Yes. So this is a precursor to learning how to write. Before we even give our children a pencil at all, this is one of the very earlier works that we would give a child. So the only thing that you might keep in mind is you would want your child to be aware of how to pick something up with a little knob. So David will show you a little knob.
Yeah.
So if your child has the ability to take their 3 little fingers like this and pick it up and hold an object like this, which actually takes quite a bit of strength and dexterity, then they're ready for the geometric cabinet. And so this is one of the things that where they are literally strengthening their fingers to learn to write. And by studying the shapes themselves, they are learning about straight lines. They're learning about like the straight L shape. They're learning about curved shapes, in the way that they will be tracing them with their fingers.
And their eye too. They're training their eye to be able to discern between very fine changes.
Yes,
in angle or shape. Thinking about that nonagon again, there's so many little bits you have to really think and see them. Those are really valuable. I was thinking like being able to see the difference in a lowercase a, e, or o takes visual training, right? It takes acuity. And the more we give them practice with these other kinds of objects, the more we're kind of helping train the eye to see and the information to process.
Yeah, so we call that visual discrimination, where you're looking at different shapes, you're discriminating between them. I think it also, the way we interact with these geometric shapes, it's a very meditative process. It can be very, very zen. When you give this lesson, it'll either be boring to you because it's so slow and methodical, or you can think of it as like a training in mindfulness meditation. So I don't know if you have ever not just sat, but like walked in a slow circle or on a labyrinth. And just like felt that repetition and that kind of peace that comes from not really knowing when the end will come. It's kind of the same when you are tracing your fingers around these geometric shapes, these 2D shapes. And it's a different experience from the geometric solids, which you're holding in your hand. With these geometric shapes, there's I don't know, you're just doing it so slowly and so lovely. It's reminiscent of the way we interact with the sandpaper letters. It literally calms your body down. So
I think that's an important thing. I think there's a lot of stimulation in the modern world, especially with all the technology we have and on-demand everything that is for children. It can be overwhelming. And so thinking about what is one of the values of using something like a geometric cabinet, I mean, this meditative approach is actually maybe more valuable than you might initially think, because it forces or rather allows the child to slow down, and you're giving them lessons and experiences that reward slower, more thoughtful physical engagement versus tap, 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 tap on a screen or run, 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 run. You need big gross motor skill stuff too, but there's a lot of like fast interaction in our world, like ads on TV or in a YouTube app, or interacting with something on a smartphone. Very, 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 very hyper reactive. So this is kind of the opposite, and it's actually really, really important for their brains to have that ability to slow down.
Yeah, it
So
is. It also, I think it's good training for handling delicate and fragile objects. So
yeah.
when you are, for example, you're carrying a vase, across the room, you want your children to be familiar, with how to very carefully touch a fragile object. And so by treating the geometric shapes, in this very delicate, careful way that we touch them, we're training their bodies to react to their whole world in the same way. You can imagine, like, the first time your child holds a little ladybug
hmm
in their hand, you don't want them to be grabbing it and
hmm
squishing it. You want them to understand, how to interact in a gentle and careful way. And so
Yeah,
these
that's right.
kind of lessons really teach
Pet
that.
a kitten's ear, those sorts of things that
Yeah.
we do with little ones.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about how to give a lesson.
Yeah,
So let's see. So let's get out. That circle one is probably on the bottom. Let's get
that's
that
okay.
one out. Yeah. All right. And we'll kind of use this. Okay, good. Thank you. We'll put those away later.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So we have these circles here. And we've got the largest circle here. We've got the smallest circle here. If you were going to give a lesson like this, it doesn't really matter what shapes you would start out with. If you were going to teach the names of the shapes, then you would obviously give a 3-period lesson. And we've given a lot of examples of
Yeah.
that in previous episodes.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of skip over that. You're welcome to look it up online if you want to know how to give a 3-period lesson. That's how you would first interact with
Yeah.
this.
So in a nutshell, the 3 periods are introduce it, play with it, and then I don't want to say assess, but have the child come back to you with that information. So in a nutshell.
Okay. So we're assuming your child already knows that what a circle is and has been introduced to a circle when you get to this particular little lovely tray. But you're actually going to do something quite cool. Can you hold that up for us? So you're going to take your dominant hand, and for me, it's my right hand, and you're actually just going to grasp one of the circles and you'll pick it up and you're going to put it somewhere else, like on your rug in front of you, away, so that you can see the frame here and you can see the inset right here. All right. And then you will actually go back and pick it up again with your non-dominant hand, which is my left, with the same kind of grasp. And so this part is what's really super good training for the kids, because with the knob cylinders, they're probably using their dominant hand the whole
hmm
time. And so this is an activity where they actually are encouraged to use their non-dominant hand and strengthen these fingers as well. Okay. So then they lift it up like this. And then you're going to take your 2 fingers. So we've got this shape is being held vertically by your non-dominant hand, and you'll take your index finger and your middle finger. Generally, you'll start at the top, and then you're going to trace the shape very slowly from the top all the way around, just once if you want, or you can do it a few times, but just like that. And you're not really talking while you're giving this lesson, you're just tracing. And then you're going to put it back down, and then you'll pick up another one and you'll place this one down, right? And you'll do the same for all of the shapes. And when you're done exploring all of these shapes, they're all out in front of you. They're going to be kind of mixed up, out of order. Then you're going to go and do it again. You're going to, this time, you're going to look at the circles and see which one you'd like to find the circle to. So let's just take some of those out. All right, let's pretend we have these 3 that we're working with. So in order to put them back where they go, you are not just going to do it visually with your eyes, you're going to do it with your fingers. So you're going to come back again with your index finger and your middle finger, and you're going to go to one of the circles that you'd like to find one of the frames that you'd like to find the inset for, and you'll just trace around it. Okay, and get that shape. And the idea is that you are kind of memorizing this physical form, like how big it is in your mind as you trace it. All right. And then your fingers are going to come back over here and they're going to pick up one of these circles, right? And you can either trace forwards or backwards. Usually it's counterclockwise, but I don't really think it matters, honestly. I'm just feeling the shape. Is that the right shape? Let's feel this one. Feels too small. Maybe we even try it. No, too small. No. Let's try this one. We'll trace this. Oh, this feels pretty big. And then, we can kind of confirm and then we'll try it. Right. So there's an emphasis really on when you're putting them back. It's all about the touch in the primary years. It's all about that sensory feel, the feeling of the frame and the feeling of the inset itself. That's the important part.
That's because you're using the sense to help develop the visual acuity, right? The visual discrimination.
Yeah. So it's not just about sight. Most of it, in the primary years is about the sensorial experience with touch. But of course, the visual helps as well. It's easier for the eye to tell the difference between a super small and a super big. It's harder to tell the difference between something like these two. So you can go ahead and put that back. Could you DIY a set like that for your child to explore sensorially? Absolutely.
Totally, yeah.
And it actually might not be that hard to do it. I like to get our dishes out and see if I can get a series of like teacups to larger bowls.
That's a good idea.
So it doesn't matter if your circles are the same size as the circles that are presented here. You can, get the circles that you have at your house, just as long as they're a variation in size.
That's right. Because this is, again, we've talked about it many times. It's all about the intent, right? So the purpose is not to have these precise, graduated in size circles or whatever. It's to show this discrimination between the very smallest and the very largest, and to give them the opportunity to do this tracing and feeling and practicing.
Yeah. Now, what do we do with our lower elementary kids? They if they have been through the Montessori program in their primary years, they've done a lot of the sensorial tracing of these already. What we do in the lower elementary years that's so cool is we actually use these circles and measure them. We'll actually measure how big is the smallest, how what is the radius of this one,
That's
and
right.
they'll actually use these geometric shapes. They'll trace around them on paper, and then we'll use them to identify the parts. Like we'll find the center, mathematically. We'll measure it with a ruler. We'll find the diameter and the radius. We'll talk about the shapes in that kind of a way.
Yeah, and I think, expanding even beyond that, and this is why I think geometry is not purely just part of the mathematics in the Montessori, is, for those of you who are interested in art, one of the ways that we appreciate art is we look at its form, the way that the shapes within it, or when we teach a child or an adult to draw or to paint, we often get them to look for the shapes inside of an object and sort of frame out. So you're also, through this work in geometry, it's not just about the math and the science, although that is obviously there. There's also a lot of art and artistry within the geometric discipline. And what's great about this approach and using these physical objects is that you can kind of highlight that. You can imagine taking out a shape and then going around your house and looking for things that are in that same shape, and then having the child think about where else do they see that shape, or how do different shapes combine. And then you can start to do both, you can look at that from an artistic point of view as well as from a mathematic point of view. So if
Mhm.
you were to combine two unusual shapes, could you then figure out the area of that?
Yeah, yeah, it can get very, very complicated. So, to kind of sum up here, the geometric cabinet is expensive. Yep, but it is one of our essentials because of the lessons that you give with it and because of the benefits that it provides.
Yeah.
Don't worry if you don't have little knobs on yours or if you make yours out of foam. A lot of our parents like to make it out of chipboard or
Yeah.
cardboard, or just manipulating paper. Maybe you don't get all of the benefits of the geometric cabinet, but if you have a set of metal insets at home, your child will already be getting a lot of the benefits that we talked about in that way.
Yeah. Just think about whether your goal, your intent for this material.
Yeah, yeah. So we talked about some of the DIYs. If you have any questions about the geometric cabinets or about other Montessori essentials, feel free to email us at hello@childoftheredwoods.com.
Absolutely. And you
Yeah.
can get this and all of our 21 essentials, the whole list for free on our website, childoftheredwoods.com/essentials. Now we're off next week, but we will be back in 2 weeks.
Yep.
And we have could be completely free essential. Do you know what it is? It's bones.
It's bones.
Oh, yes, bones. It'll be fun for life science. So we hope to see you there. Bring your favorite bone, I guess.
Bring your favorite bone.
Yeah. Like your pinky bone or your funny bone.
Bring yourselves, friends. We'll see you next week.
Your
Take
head
care.
bone. I don't know. Bye.